Hello. So thank you very much for, I was voluntold, or no, I was asked to do this months ago, and I was like, absolutely. But then I made it a little bit complicated, right? Because I shared some news, some personal news. So today, because I know that we have an hour, and I want to make sure to use this time as productively as possible, I'm actually going to do what Andrea asked me to do, which is present on this project, BiomeSTL, which I'll get to in a little bit. So I'll do that, but I'm going to abbreviate it, if that's okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it and maybe answer some questions about it until about halfway through, until about 11:30 or so, 11:30, 11:35, because then I'd like to spend the rest of the time together to share a little bit more about my news. Hopefully all of you got that piece of information a little while back. And I wanted to be able to convey a few sentiments specifically for this group, and then also have the opportunity to make sure that all of you put a face to the name of Glenda Abney. Glenda is right here in the front row. Glenda currently serves, as many of you already know Glenda very well, she currently serves as director of our Earthway Center, which is the sustainability division of the garden. But she will also be stepping up in an interim capacity to serve as the interim vice president after I step away. So she came here, thank you Glenda, and hopefully you all will have a chance to, if you haven't already, meet her in person. You can talk with her afterwards. So let's get to it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and dive deep into this topic today, and then we'll have some more time to talk about other things, transitions, right? Okay, so BiomeSTL. BiomeSTL is actually the name of a regional biodiversity atlas that's shaping up across the region. And the garden has played an interesting behind-the-scenes role and more in front-of-the-scenes role in doing this. So this is very specific to the greater St. Louis region, and it's potentially really transformative in terms of how we value our local lands and waters, how we steward them, how we make decisions about them, and how everyone can see themselves in the work, from individual volunteers to grassroots community groups, to city and county decision makers, to other policymakers, etc. So this is a collective piece of work. But first, before we do that, I need everybody to go to their happy place. So just go to your happy place. This is mine for many of you that know me, and this is not a particular place. You can probably, this was taken in the garden. Who has a guess of where it was taken? Anybody?
The stream?
It was taken in the English Woodland Garden. And mossy rocks are my happy place. So I ask you all to think about whatever your happy place or what makes you think happy thoughts. So that's the context in which I want you to understand the nature of this project. But before we do that, I blended for today. See, I'm already wanting to walk. I know. Right?
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I appreciate that this is being found. Hello, Saturday people that I won't be in front of. I get it. I'm just giving Andrea a hard time. Because they only have so many days to give her a hard time, and I'm just trying to squish it in there.
It'll be on YouTube forever.
Right, it'll be on YouTube forever. Yeah. So what I did today for this presentation is I blended a few presentations. I had the recent honor of co-keynoting at the Missouri Environmental Education Association conference, which was just held last week, November 2nd. And I keynoted, if that's a verb, with Louise Bradshaw from the zoo. Who knows Louise? Okay, so Louise is my counterpart at the zoo. She is the director of education at the St. Louis Zoo, and she and I have been colleagues and friends for many years. But we co-keynoted at the Missouri Environmental Ed Association conference last week, and our theme for that presentation was the ampersand, and. Okay, so that's a big topic and concept that I want to make sure that you all appreciate this. And BiomeSTL is one big and. And what I mean by that is, we all can appreciate that there's a lot of divisiveness in the world right now, right? An either-or world. And that you can look at that through the lens of economics, you can look at that through the lens of politics, you can look at that for all sorts of things. But it's really, really important for more and more people to, instead of thinking in an either-or mindset, seek out the and. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean by that. And I ask you all throughout this presentation, as I explain more about what I mean by ands, think about your own ands. Where are they? Who are they? Right? So let's go ahead and warm up, shall we? In terms of, I'm going to give you a first thing to dig into. Where did sorry, I want to know. Where did so I took this picture a couple months ago here in St. Louis. Who can guess where I took this picture? At the old courthouse. Huh. And I thought this was brilliant. Because one, I mean, everyone has seen the caution cones, and they're really boring, right? And they look really legal, and they look really uninspiring and forgettable. I will never forget this one. And that was a government, I mean, that's an old courthouse. So someone at the National Park Service saw this on Amazon and said, oh, let's buy that. So kudos to whoever that was, because I, as a professional interpreter and educator for over 25 years, stopped and took a darn picture of it because I thought it was brilliant. Because it was fun and effective. Do you get what I'm talking about with the and? We can be both. We can be the and, right? We can be fun and we can be effective. And I walked carefully after I saw this. I did not run, right? I mean, that's a banana peel. Come on, that's fantastic. Right? Okay, so now that's a warm-up. Okay, that's a warm-up. So here's a few other ands. You know, sustainability is a big, ginormous concept, and it takes lots of different forms. But here's an example. So my husband and teenage daughter do not like to get their picture taken. So I took their picture from the back when we were grocery shopping recently. And here they are with their reusable bags, grocery shopping, which is one of the very, simple but powerful sustainable actions that all of us can take in our lives to wean ourselves off of the unsustainable use of single-use plastic. And they were doing it, and they looked cool doing it. She's got her Beatles bag, that's her Beatles bag, and she got her stuff there. And then, my husband has his favorite reusable bag. So my point is you can be sustainable and cool, right? This one gets a little bit closer to home, right? So when you think about kids, and you all, and everyone here, right? You know this, whether you have kids of your own, whether you spend your volunteer hours here engaging kids. Many kids, and not just kids, adults, right? Easily distracted. And they have a huge capacity to focus. In the right circumstances, given the right prompts. I've seen so many of you, and I already promised myself that I would not get emotional this early as a presentation. I've seen so many of you, artfully and skillfully, draw a visitor's eyes to the inside of a flower petal. I've seen so many of you take what is an unwieldy group of humans and focus them on things. And you do this with aplomb. And it's hard, right? It's hard. There's so many factors out of your control. But to remember that the people, whether it's school kids, youth groups, adults, families, the diversity of people that come and seek out experiences at the Garden, Shaw Nature Reserve, Butterfly House, and Litzinger. Yes, they've got a lot going on, but the power of nature and the power of our places here and the plants that are here and the living forms can wield their attention and can draw them in. And that's one of the things that this group and many of the staff teams do so very well here. So when we think about this project Biome, we think about these concepts of the and we think, we want to live in a region where all life forms can thrive and can coexist. And that sounds really lofty and like what you see on a Hallmark card, but it really is what we're going for here. We're really looking for communities and regions and neighborhoods where biodiversity can thrive, where humans can thrive, and that are more resilient to impacts that are known and unknown, whether it's climate change impacts or others. So we know that there can be nature-based solutions to more livable communities, and that's at the heart of this. So a little bit of context, where did Biome come from? So who here is familiar with this network, Biodiversity St. Louis? Who here has heard this network? And okay, a few. So Biodiversity St. Louis is just that. It's a network of organizations. It was actually started by the Garden, by our own Dr. Weiss Jackson back in 2012, soon after he came to the Garden. He himself was very involved with urban biodiversity. He created one of his first projects as a young botanist was to contribute to a biodiversity action plan for Ballymoon, which was a very, very blighted area of Dublin. He came to the Garden, and of course he comes with a global lens, and his leadership on the global stage is unparalleled. But he also came knowing that the urban and suburban and rural regions that make up where the metropolitan areas are important opportunities also. And so he challenged us to leverage the Garden's role and leadership in the community and convene a network. And we did in 2012 with about 30 organizations that came for a summit. And then since then, it has grown to over 100 organizations. And not just other nonprofits and cultural institutions like ourselves, but governments, businesses, faith-based groups, schools, universities, research institutes. So it's the and, it's all of those people. And these three primary objectives are its reason for being: to enable greater diversity of life to thrive, to build a culture of active, healthy outdoor living. That's why we do things like the Meet Me Outdoors in St. Louis events every spring, and that calendar of places to go across the region. And we want to increase in a really deep and meaningful way the capacity of communities to steward and value their own landscapes, whether it's directly on the ground through citizen stewardship, like invasive species removals or tree plantings, or whether it's indirectly, showing up at land use committee meetings, showing up, asking questions of your county's policy leaders about how they are valuing their forests and their woodlands and their wetlands. So this is the reason for being. And it's what an and this is. This is just a few of the partners involved. It really does take a village, and the St. Louis region has so many of these assets who are already working in this lens. And what biodiversity intends to do is lift everyone up and basically shine a deserving spotlight on all of that work, because collectively, that's the work that's needed in order for change to happen at the scale and pace needed. So instead of these individual efforts, it's the individual efforts and a collective vision, okay? Individual and collective. So biodiversity has a lot of things going on. So I already mentioned Meet Me Outdoors in St. Louis. Citizen science is a big part of what we do. The City Nature Challenge, BioBlitzes that we do with our friends at the Academy of Science St. Louis. We do a speaker series, Wild Ideas. This month, in the month of November, is Honeysuckle Sweet Month. We do it twice a year, March and November. It's getting people out to their local landscapes to tackle not only honeysuckle, but other problematic invasives. We have a youth employment coalition that we belong to, the St. Louis Green Tea Alliance, where collectively with entities like Forest Park Forever and others, we employ youth in outdoor environmental stewardship jobs. So it's a college and career program. So we got a lot going on. And in the region, our friends at the East-West Gateway regional government basically said to biodiversity, hey, can you come and can you be part of this broader group that's looking at sustainability in a more holistic way for the whole region? Because we'd like to bring some focus to 6 different areas. And East-West Gateway has this initiative called the 1STL Sustainability Plan. And it's basically powered by these 6 different working groups: water and green infrastructure, waste and materials, energy and emissions, transit-oriented development, food access, and biodiversity. So right now I'm not going to go into detail about each of those, but I wanted you to see that this is part, collectively, this is transitioning St. Louis and the St. Louis region to a more sustainable place to live, work, and play. And there's lots of brilliant, wicked smart individuals behind this. It's growing. These teams meet with each other. These teams dig deep in terms of what they're doing, and each of them has this goal. Each of them has this target, and this target was well thought out, and over years it was developed by a lot of different stakeholders. So I'm going to dig deep into the biodiversity one. So this is that same target that you saw on the slide before. And this is what it is. By 2025, 100% of the counties in the combined statistical area of St. Louis, and just so you know, that's the 17 counties that make up our area. So the city of St. Louis in the middle, plus 8 counties on the Illinois side and 8 counties on the Missouri side, home to 2.9 million people. That's the combined statistical area of St. Louis. So 100% of those counties will be using a regional biodiversity vision, atlas, and inventory that helps them guide their planning, their policies, and their practices in ways that increase connectivity, habitat connectivity, and this whole idea of corridors, ecological functionality, the extent to which stormwater can be absorbed, the extent to which carbon can be sequestered, the extent to which, all the, the water and air that we rely on can be healthy because of nature-based, functional nature-based solutions. And of course, a really important one, quality of life for all. And that for all piece is really, really big. So this is our task, right? Not an easy one. So it's not gonna happen quickly or by accident. It's gonna happen with intent. So the big idea here is when we started looking at this, everybody has seen all the boring maps of St. Louis, right? So we're trying to think a little bit differently here and blur those geopolitical boundaries a bit. Blur the boundaries of where our cities and counties stop and start. Instead, put the emphasis or put the lens on what our landscapes are, where our ecoregions are. I live over on the Illinois side, and there's a lot of agricultural land on the Illinois side. But much of that land where I live technically, I live in the River Hills ecosystem, as told to me by EPA, right? All of you live in some ecoregion. That some of the documents that I was able to bring, and I'm sorry I didn't bring enough, I will make sure that Andrea has plenty more for anyone that wants them. But this whole idea of ecoregions, it goes into a little bit more detail on that. But so the idea was, what is the land where we're at? What does it want to be? What could it be? What are plant-based solutions to it? And so that helped form this idea of this atlas. And it's really these main concepts that are powering it. It's inspired first and foremost by our natural assets, our rivers, creeks, and streams, our forests, our woodlands, our grasslands, our wetlands. We have them here in spades in St. Louis. I am not a St. Louis native, I'm a Florida native, but I've lived in St. Louis since 1996. I know that still doesn't make me a native. I cannot answer I can answer the question of where I went to high school, but you will not know it because it's in Florida, right? But I've grown to love this region for all of its natural assets. I mean, we have them, but some of them are not easy to see or get to. We kind of sometimes play hard to get with our nature sometimes. Anyway, so it's inspired first and foremost by our natural assets, informed, of course, by science, data, and evidence, and we've got that in spades as well. What biodiversity lives where, what best practices, etc. It's powered by a network of organizations, and it's activated by people, by citizens and communities. So that's the main idea. And again, this is all about looking first and foremost at what the landscape is telling us and how can we make better decisions and nature-based decisions about how we plan and design and sustain our communities. So there's 2 different user groups for this atlas. One are the land use decision makers. This is a fairly, in many ways, all of us are decision makers, right? By what we do collectively, individually on our own landscapes, our own home landscapes, our own neighborhood landscapes. But with this particular group, I'm talking about the people that are sitting in rooms right now. I bet there's, in those 17 counties, I bet there's people in rooms right now whipping out plat maps about where the next development will go, about where to give a permit to something. And right, there is. And I doubt that in those rooms that this concept is very mainstreamed, right? I'm seeing a lot of people shaking their heads, right? So this whole idea of how can we make sure that the people who are in positions where they can make decisions about our lands and waters have an ecological mindset and can see the value that our landscapes are providing us and can center their decisions around those, not in spite of them, right? So that's a big, big part of this BiomeSTL work, is getting to those decision makers, educating, informing, and making sure that this idea can be mainstreamed into their thought processes. But the other user group is everybody else. Again, I said 2.9 million people live here. So that first group is a finite group. This one, of course, is finite, but it's a lot bigger. So it's basically 2.87 million people. You know, it's everybody else. It's all of the people in this room. It's all of the groups that right now are on that slide. And it's others too. So we want this resource to be useful for lots of people, so that they get a better, deeper understanding of the place where they live. And so there's a couple phases in that in that printout that I gave you that goes into more detail about what's meant by phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is really descriptive, meaning describing where are our biologically valuable places. Where are they? And let's map them. And let's get them on the map so that these decision makers know, okay, I have an old growth forest in my county. I have this endangered species in my community. You know, let's map that. And one of the ways that we're mapping that is through citizen science. So BiomeSTL, in addition to being a regional vision, atlas, and inventory, it's also a citizen science project. I just took this screenshot yesterday from my computer. So BiomeSTL right now lives on iNaturalist. Who here is familiar with the iNaturalist platform? Good, a big chunk of you. So iNaturalist is a citizen science program. It's the basis of, increasingly, it's a very popular one, and it's exceptionally brilliant and powerful. You take a picture of any life form and you upload it, and that's an observation that then goes to the iNaturalist database, and this is a global database. BiomeSTL lives on iNaturalist as a regional project for the greater St. Louis region, and as of yesterday, over 90,000 observations have been made, representing over 5,000 species. I can't even see 6,000 observers. The middle number there, identifiers, those are people that go into the observation and help you identify what it is. So I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about iNaturalist, but this is powerful. This is that last bullet that I showed on a few other slides about powered by citizens. This is what I'm talking about. We've got everyday people going out and documenting the life forms in their communities. And they don't even have to join this project. They automatically, if they live in that geographic region, their observation counts to this. And this data is being mined to answer some really cool questions. Where are species being found? Where are they not? Where are they not being found? What are some projects that we can do if we have a parcel of land that we value in our community? What does this data say about what's living there? So it's hugely powerful. Teachers love it. And we have more and more teachers now embracing this at the school and classroom level. The two handouts that I gave you, one is more general about bio, the other one is specifically for educators. And it really steps through point by point how teachers and scout leaders and any youth group can use this to engage their own students and kids in the act of documenting the life all around us. Phase 2 is prescriptive. So descriptive is one thing. What's living here? What habitats do we have here? But it's also and prescriptive, meaning it's not just about what's here. What could be here? Where could be the corridors that connect our habitat fragments? Where could be some more healthy streams and forest corridors all throughout our community? So it's not just looking at what's here now, but what could be if we value it and if we work with intent. Then these are some great examples. Missouri River Country. Who likes to go experience the wine country, right? Wine, anybody? Okay, I see several hands. Thank you, thank you. Missouri River Country is one example that started out as this corridor concept from an ecotourism lens. Of course, who wouldn't want to go out to the Katy Trail and see some of those beautiful open space landscapes and along the way enjoy some really cool locally grown wines? But no, I mean, the ecotourism lens is a powerful one. And it's gotten each of those communities to show up to this, to see their collective landscape scale opportunity as something bigger than just their individual towns. And it's morphed from an ecotourism campaign to an open space conservation effort right now. So they're going beyond just bringing tourists out there to enjoy wine and have a nice bike ride. They're talking to farmers and private landowners about best practices. So that, and then the flip is happening on the Illinois side. This image right here with the verdant crescent, that's happening in Madison and St. Clair counties, where our good friends at Heartlands Conservancy started out working with those governments on a stormwater management plan. How are they going to make sure that lessons from all across the region, including like Deer Creek watershed, how are they going to make sure that green infrastructure and plant-based solutions to mitigate stormwater can happen in those counties? Because flooding is real, right? Flooding is a big, big issue. So what started out as a stormwater management plan has now morphed into an ecotourism plan. Now they're putting more idea around this verdant crescent concept, because that was the geography of that stormwater management. But then when they started looking closely, they realized, oh wait, Cahokia Mounds is right there. SIU Gardens is there. Pierre Marquette. And they started realizing that, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could market the Green Crescent? And by the way, I live in the Green Crescent. So now I can say, instead of I live in Edwardsville, I live in the Green Crescent, which is part of the River Hills ecosystem. You know, I mean, it's an identity piece. So it's really powerful. So lots of use case scenarios for this data, not only from planners, from scientists, but cities and citizen stewards. So we hope that this is used. The inventory, the atlas, is still in its formative stages. I can't point you to a place right now where everything's all there. It's being built, but there's a lot of momentum behind it. Here's some of the things I wanted to make sure that you knew, some of the things that you could do. So you could join iNaturalist if you haven't already. You could pick a local landscape to love, but I am imagining, as I look across this room, that you already have those. I'm imagining that many people here already have a local landscape to love. You could go on a lawn diet, right? I'm not demonizing lawns. I'm not here to demonize lawns, but we all know that lawns don't have to be the default landscape of our world. They really don't. You know, thriving native ground covers and shrubs and trees and layers in our landscapes can do so much, can have so many benefits to us. And, right, ecological benefits, environmental benefits, social and wellness, health and wellness benefits. And then, you know, there's other ways to dig deep in here in terms of get connected with biodiversity, get on its email list, dig deep into some of these resources. So again, it's about, this whole project is about embracing the and. I already talked about descriptive and prescriptive. I want to mention this concept real briefly about land sharing versus land saving. What's meant by that is land sharing is really, think about our own places where we live, our own communities and neighborhoods, our subdivisions, our city streets, our schools, our shopping districts, and all of those places where the built environment is at. There's lots of opportunities to invite nature back in and intentionally design landscapes, whether it's green roofs, whether it's transforming lawn into something way more productive and diverse, whether it's building micro-habitats and food gardens as well, not just wildlife and native plant gardens. So it's looking at bringing nature back into the places where we're living, working, and playing, and enabling nature to coexist with us. But it's also about land saving. And what I mean by that is there are, to varying degrees across the 17 counties, big parcels still that can be saved. Now, every county is different, right? St. Louis County, St. Charles County, other counties are very developed, whereas some other counties on the Metro East Side, not so much. But what we're saying right now with this question is, what can be saved? What big parcels of forest and wetland can be saved, and how, and can we? Instead of the default practice of continuing to make decisions that don't value all of the benefits that those healthy landscapes provide. And this last one is really important for city and counties especially. It can be economically vibrant and ecologically vibrant. This is a big one. Too often, and one of my pet peeves, as my staff members know, is when a false choice is put out there that says it either can be economically good for us or environmentally good for us. And that mindset is not going to get us too far, right? The regular thing right now is for any economic gain, there's probably some sort of environmental pain that happens. And that can't work. We have to seek out the and. We have to seek out those solutions that are both economically and environmentally vibrant. I'm going to point to Glenda Abney, my colleague here. She's really good at referencing that too, and her words are the three legs of the stool from a standpoint of economic. It has to make economic sense, environmental sense, social sense. It has to do it all. And that's the mindset that's really needed if change is going to happen. So a few last slides here, and then I'll stop and we can transition to the other topic of the day. These are a few ands that are important to me personally. We can have clean energy and healthy habitats, right? I love this slide, right? Who knows where this picture is? You should.
Roof of seabed.
You're cheating because you know. Anybody? Anybody? It's the roof of seabed. That's what's on the Commerce Bank Education Center, right? I don't know who took that picture. It's a brilliant picture.
I don't know who took it. It's brilliant.
The security guy that left.
Oh, the security guy.
Steve Frank.
Okay. Anyway, so solar panels, super important. I know this question came up with the new visitor center project. Solar panels will be part of the new visitor center project. So, transitioning to clean energy economy takes many forms, and solar isn't the one-size-fits-all solution, but it's a big one that's out there, and it's being more mainstreamed right now. Anyway, clean energy and healthy habitats. Healthy habitats and healthy people. So it's not just about the plants and animals and mushrooms and fungi and birds. It is all about that, but that also equates to health and well-being for humans in so many ways, not just from an outdoor recreation lens, but from a more basic lens of cleaner air, cleaner water. And of course, we all know very much about all of the well-documented benefits of having everyday access to nature, everyday access to healthy habitats, regardless of your age or your background or abilities, regardless of the zip code that you live in. This is super important. Biodiversity and human diversity. This is another big one. And there's lots of interesting parallels here. If I were a restoration ecologist standing in front of you right now, I could go on and on about the brilliance of a healthy habitat in terms of the diversity that it has in it, because diversity equals resilience. And I would say that same lens can be applied to human diversity too. The more perspectives and people of different backgrounds and abilities, the stronger a community is. That's a big one. Individual actions and collective actions. So that's the other big point here that I've stressed, is that it's not just about taking individual actions wherever you are, but seeking out collective systemic change as well. It's not enough just for individual actions. And I know individual actions are part of our messaging here. To anyone that comes to the garden or engages with our programs, what can you do? So I'm not saying to not say that anymore. I'm not saying that, please no. Individual actions do count. And collective actions have to happen, right? At the community scale. And that can happen in the form of policies. It can happen in the form of collective change in your community. It can happen when multiple people get together and support a particular thing that's going to benefit multiple people, not just a single person. So it's important to have that lens. So I asked you at the beginning to think about what your ands are and who they are. Before I close out here and transition to the what's next and open it up for questions, I'm just curious, as I went through this presentation, did you all think about the ands in your life? Okay, I see some, so I'm going to call upon the people that are nodding their heads here. Any examples of ands? Yes, sir.
Well, like Great Rivers Greenway, Susan Trotman, they just, on the south end of Grants Trail, took a piece of property, put a new trail through it, but also restored a pretty nice piece of property that had been abused. Turned it back into wetlands, spent a whole lot of extra money that they probably didn't need to, and it's going to be cool.
So yeah, so not only from a bikeable and walkable, but also from a habitat standpoint.
Yeah, right along Gravois Creek.
Yeah, that's a great example of an and. Come on, I know this is not a shy group, yes.
Boy Scouts are now for boys and girls.
Boy Scouts, that's a brilliant one. Okay, Boy Scouts are for both boys and girls. Anybody else? Just shout them out. Oh, come on, my banana peel example didn't inspire other examples?
Exercise and health.
Exercise and health, fantastic. Someone at, when Louise and I were doing this keynote, we asked the same question, and they were calling out all sorts of things. One of them that I loved was climate change and optimism. So often, it's kind of heavy, right? The threats and the data that are out there about the impacts that will happen. But I loved that and climate change and optimism. Yes?
Does discover and share work?
Discover and share, of course. See? I know, after I stop talking right now, you're going to be like, oh, I thought of another one. Send them to Andrea.
Yes, send them to me.
Send them to Andrea. Yes?
Take a walk and learn about nature.
Take a walk and learn about nature. That's right. So it's not just, you could be taking a walk for exercise, but along the way, you can learn a thing or two about what's in your area. Absolutely. Yes?
There was a research article yesterday on Facebook that wine is good for your teeth and sore throat.
Oh, I love that one. I love that one. That's a perfect one, and I think a great one to end our presentation on. Right? Right? I love it. That's perfect. See, you captured the essence of what I was going for. So check, right?
Check.
I
We need
accomplished
more
the
wine.
objective. Right. So, and of course, this is the big why, right? Because we all want a clean, healthy place to live. So that's the big, if I had to wrap up all those slides, that's what it comes down to. Okay, so with that, so before I shift gears and use the remaining part of my time here to share with you some thoughts about this transition that we're in right now with education leadership, just any other questions about that presentation? I can hang out for a little bit afterwards too. I do highly recommend you all connecting to, going onto the Garden's website, and you can find more information about Biodiversity St. Louis. You can sign up for the newsletter. You can get connected to some things going on. I will say, I will give a plug, one plug for, what's today, Tuesday? Thursday night, this Thursday night at the Garden, there is a free speaker series called Invasive Species Solutions. And it's a great one. It's here at the Garden, and we're holding it, education collaborated with Shaw Nature Reserve and the Center for Conservation and Sustainable Development here at the Garden to bring some speakers from the Chicagoland area, some speakers from Ohio, but also some speakers from here in the St. Louis area to focus in on this topic of invasive species solutions from the lens of science and policy and stewardship. And so if you're not doing anything on Thursday night, it's free and it's here, and I think we'll have some light hors d'oeuvres.
What time?
And yeah, I believe it starts at 6. Goes from 6 to 8. So that's here at the Garden. And that's part of all this work, is doing things like that and convening talks like that. Okay, no other, I've officially, I'm sure you all are in deep, deep thought. And thinking about the ands. Okay, so let's go ahead and transition. So you all got this news. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing it. I think I'll put a little blurb. You have a Vine coming out this week?
Maybe.
I'll put a last little blurb. Maybe? The Vine is like one of those things that people wait for, right?
I know.
They all read
It's
it.
a value thing in your
right?
inbox. Andrea does a great job of doing that. I hope it's that valuable to you all as far as keeping you up to speed on things going on at the Garden, because there's always things going on at the Garden. So I did. I made a decision in recent months that was hard for me to make. And so I wanted to, the announcement went out, but I wanted to look at you all in the eyes, and the people on Saturday, I'll look at you as well, and share a few bits of context about it. So this past September, I believe, was my 10th anniversary, which in Garden terms, that's nothing, right? We've got people here who have been here for decades. But I will tell you that 10 years here at the Garden, and before that, I spent 15 years in the zoo and aquarium field, also in environmental education. And together, that's 25 years in zoos, aquariums, botanic gardens, working with some of the most brilliant people I've ever had the honor to work with. And doing fantastically wonderful things to engage public audiences, to work in partnership with so many great organizations on the global scale and the local scale. And man, it's been a wonderful part of my life. That said, in the past several years, I would say the past 3 or 4 specifically, in my non-garden life, I've become way more involved with some things that put my graduate degree to work. So I have a graduate degree in environmental policy. I earned it from locally. I earned it from Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. It's actually one of the reasons why I live in Edwardsville. Although I did that, by the way, a little aside, I did that completely wrong. I went to graduate school at night when I worked a block away from the garden. and then I moved to Edwardsville, and then I started working at the garden. I so did that wrong. Anywho, so I've been involved in the past couple of years with a variety of things outside of work, using and digging deep with some colleagues in the Metro East in Illinois, as well as at the state level in Illinois, and actually some national and a few tidbits of global things as well. And again, I've been so fortunate to meet with so many great colleagues and develop relationships with people who are doing what they can with what they have to advance concepts that I care about. Biodiversity conservation is one of them, nature-centric communities, healthy lands and waters. And over the past 25 years, I've been able to do that in places like this. I mean, my gosh, the honor to work at a world-renowned botanical institution is phenomenal. But one of the reasons why it was easy to make this decision, if you can say that, is because the bench strength here. So I'm gonna mix. I apologize to the sports fans out there. I'm gonna do some horrible mixing of sports analogies right now. The bench strength. So you think about that like basketball. Like, what's your bench strength? The bench strength here is deep. There are brilliant people here in this room, in outside of this room, who've got it. When I first came to the garden 10 years ago, I took the baton from people before me who were brilliant. And I tried my best not to drop it, and I tried to get it downfield. With the help, shoot, darn it, I can't look at this person. I can't look at this person. And I did that in partnership with all the great colleagues here, staff, volunteers. And that's what it takes, right? It's not about one person. It's about what you can do together, the and. And so I feel here that this work is in really, really good hands. But then when I look outside at some of the things that I've been doing outside of work, oh goodness, not so much. We've got decisions that are being made without an ecological lens. We've got decisions being made about our communities, about our air and water, that are not infused with science, data, and evidence. And we need more advocates in those rooms. So I've made the decision to flip the switch, if you will, or to shift gears. Again, I'm mixing analogies left and right. So I'm not getting on, everybody is very familiar with the whole fork in the road analogy in life. We all hit these forks in the road, whether it's in our personal lives or in our professional lives. And a lot of factors illuminated this fork in the road. And I've realized that, oh, I can take this other path that's parallel to what I'm doing at the garden, but a little bit more laser focused on some of the work that I think that really needs more help. And so I'm trying to say to you, I'm trying to give everybody here a ginormous compliment. And that's hard to do and still say, oh, and see ya. You know what I mean? Like, please know that that's not the spirit. I will always and forever be cheering for the garden. I will always and forever be grateful to work for it. But I feel really good that the work will still happen and will still get really, really better as it goes. I can't wait for, again, the interim period is an interim period. I know this is in really good hands, not only for the good people like Glenda and Jen and Andrea, but all of you. I'm going to ask you a favor, because all of you can be a huge stabilizing force in this transition, right? You're here, you show up, you choose to be here, and many of you have been here for a long, long time. I found a quote that someone sent me, and it was not in a context of, here I am talking about policies and politics, and this quote, it talks about democracy, but it's not in a political context. I want to read it to you because I thought immediately of all you fine people when I read this quote. Volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. Isn't that phenomenal? And it says anonymous, so whoever anonymous is brilliant, because, again, let me read that again. Volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy. You vote in elections once a year, but when you volunteer, you vote every day about the kind of community you want to live in. And I think about all of the people who volunteer at the garden, and who volunteer at other places, in our community. I'm a volunteer too. Like we all have sort of our day jobs and our volunteer hats that we wear. My goodness, it does indeed take a village. So anyway, I wanted to at least share some of that, because all of that I just said is really hard to put in an email, right? It's really tough to put in an email. The other thing that I looked at recently is I was so honored when the docents celebrated their 50th anniversary, and I know the Education Volunteer Corps has many different groups that bring their best selves. The docents was one of them. But some of the sentiments that I said at that apply to any and all volunteer groups. I get it down to my three things that I value so much. The love that you all share about the garden with the people here that can't be replicated or faked. Like you have it, and it comes across so authentically, it's infectious. The love that you have for this place is infectious, and that's the strongest trait in the room. Connection. So that's the second theme, is that the ability. This new visitor center that's coming. Yes, it will be a phenomenal physical and mission transformation of the garden. It's going to be used not only for the garden, but for St. Louis. But it's not necessarily, as we all know, it's not necessarily all about the bricks and mortar and the design of the place. You all will be the people, among the people, that bring it to life. When people come through here, the message of what the garden is and who we are has to come through. And that's not just going to come through the physical experience. That's going to come through by talking with you all, by engaging with you all, by your ability to interpret and share the best parts of the garden with others. That's where it's going to come to life. So that program piece of the physical building is super, super important. And then the last one is hope. So I'm going to read you the same thing that I read that day in Spain. So hope is my final word. Usually this word is associated with future generations, like little bitty bitty kids or teenagers, right? And to be sure, young people today are a huge source of hope for me and others. But what you do every day when you show up here, helping people feel more welcome, sharing the extraordinary story of the garden and its origins, sharing the even more extraordinary story of plants and their role in our lives, representing those traits usually assigned to the youngest among us, infectious curiosity, awe, and wonder, and never-ending fascination with all life forms, plants especially. That right there is one of the richest resources of hope we have. So on that front, I just want to say thanks to you all and cheers. I hope maybe, as I told Andrea, that one day I might join your ranks. And I was like, oh, do I have to fill out an application?
Yep.
Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to invite, I know I'm running a little, I want to invite Glenda Abney up here, because again, one of my intentions here was to give you a face to the name. And also, she will be, goodness gracious, she will be taking on quite a task here in these next few months. And from an interim standpoint, she will be doing 2 jobs. She will be serving as the interim vice president of education. Come over here so that the Saturday people can see you.
Just a little more.
Sorry.
There, that's perfect.
Again,
Wonderful.
I'm
Wonderful.
trying to be conscious to the Saturday people. So she will be serving as interim vice president of education and director of the Earthway Center. So she'll be doing those two jobs in an interim capacity. And I think the idea there, and Glenda can speak more to this, and I want Glenda to give you a little background on her. Interim will likely be sometime through the middle of first quarter of next year, because I think we want to make sure that things stay as stable as possible through the holidays and GLOW, as well as phase 1 of the visitor center project is scheduled to kick off in January, which is right around the corner, and we want that successful phase 1 to kick off. And then soon after that, I think everyone will have more brain width and bandwidth to then focus on the what's next. So with that, I want to invite Glenda to say a few words.
All right, thank you. So thank you guys very much. You know, I'm incredibly honored for whatever the time frame may be to take the baton from Sheila. Is she not just an amazing person? And she's absolutely right. The team that is in education, the bench strength is so incredibly strong. I mean, that is why, gee, Glenda, will you wear 2 hats for right now? It's like, well, because both teams, the Earthways team and the education team, are so strong, so capable, so amazing that, yes, it's going to be a lot of work, but it's not like trying to reinvent wheels. It's these projects are already there, these people are already there, you all are already there, and so it's just to help along the way in terms of all of that incredible effort that's already been going on. So for that matter, it was like, yes, I love these teams, I have full respect for these teams. Yes, that is something that I can do at this point in time. As Sheila said, the interim is at least through the first quarter of next year. Who knows how long it really will be at that point in time. At least we know that until that point in time, they're not going to try and make any other change. There's too many other things going on, like she said, holiday, grand, I dig a hole to start up the whole visitor center construction. There's too many other things going on. So we'd like to say, okay, let us establish and maintain our stability during that time frame, and then we can talk about where we're going for the future. So just a little bit about me. This starts my 20th year with the garden. Wow. So as people say, it's been a long time. I've been in the sustainability group. So a lot of people who, if you haven't been fully engaged in sustainability, people might say, 20 years, I haven't even seen you around. But have been here for that effort to do that. And thrilled to be able to do that. But just as an FYI, I grew up in St. Louis, Melville High School. So I can say that. I grew up in St. Louis, South County, of course, with Melville High School. Typical strong family with camping and everything all the way through. My master's degree, my bachelor's degree is in wildlife management. So I figured dealing with all of you is pretty much right on target. I got that. Wildlife
So which ones don't, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to get a good ology background, right? And there's lots of different ologies out there, and I thought, well, what could be more fun than wildlife biology? So that's what I did. But then I knew I wanted to teach people about it. So I have a master's degree in environmental education and interpretation. So I've been doing this stuff since a long time ago, I should say. Started off actually with the National Park Service. And then I actually switched over to, I was the first manager at Powder Valley Nature Center. When we started there, it was 112 acres of woods. So the building went in, the trails went in, the roads went in, everything went in. So it's a fabulous place. Love Powder Valley Nature Center. So I was the first manager there, and then flipped over to here. In between there, at one point in time, I taught preschool, but that was my only formal teaching process. Everything else has been informal. And I've been a volunteer since either 12 or 13 years old. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I have phenomenal respect for volunteers and for volunteering. My heart is totally in environmental education and interpretation. I think that we need to get way more people to be engaged and understanding and want to spend more time in the outdoors and quit doing this so much. And so I really want people to be able to do that. That's always been my heart. And so it's great, it's a good blend. My shift ended up going more into the sustainability realm, but only in terms of the topical areas. Because very often in the environmental education and interpretation world, they sometimes used to years ago leave off what we would consider as strong sustainability related topics. And now we're just melding them all together. So it's a good fit. I'm thrilled to be able to be here to work with all of you for whatever time frame this may be. We don't know for sure what the future will be, but the best part of this is that this is a baton that is coming from an incredible effort, and incredible work that you all do, and an incredible garden that we all get to do this work in. So I'm really thrilled to be able to be here, thrilled to be able to work with the team that's here and with all of you. And I will work with Andrea to see about anything in the future where we can expand upon additional topics and things like that. But if you have any questions, my office is in the same building that Sheila's office was in, which is Seebeck, which is just a couple of blocks up the street. So my email is always there. I have a work cell phone, so I'll make sure that Andrea knows how to get a hold of me. So if anybody ever needs anything, open door policy that we want to make sure and have. So thank you all for everything that you do. The garden is nothing without our volunteers. There are 4 or 5 times more volunteers than staff, and we deeply know that. And we deeply know the garden doesn't exist without all of you. So thank you all very much for all of that. Thanks for learning more about Biome, and always the best to Sheila.